Happy Tuesday, everyone. It's time for my daddy's podcast.
Welcome back to the Lessons for Success podcast. I'm your host, Adam Wardlaw, a middle school science teacher and a high school football coach in South Carolina. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast heard by over 2,000 students, teachers, and coaches worldwide. The goal is to provide quick daily lessons to help you achieve more in your life. Be sure to reach out to the show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and now TikTok by searching L4S Show or using the hashtag L4S Show. Remember, it's the number 4. If you're listening on an iPhone, be sure to give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts in order to keep our community growing. Now let's start the show. We've all been there, that moment where you just feel like giving up. After listening to today's episode, you'll have a new method of beating this mentality, and it's known as the cookie jar method. Welcome back, everybody, to a brand new episode of Tuesday Tips here on the L4S Show. Today's episode shares a tip for all of us out there who hit that mental block that tries to prevent us from going further. Whether it's a sporting event, studying for a test, or practicing an instrument, the moment's common. That moment where you're bored, tired, or anything else that tries to prevent you from going that extra step. The method I'm going to share with you is known as the cookie jar method. Before I go into the details of this method, you should hear the story of the person who created it. David Goggins is an American ultramarathon runner, ultra-distance cyclist, triathlete, motivational speaker, and author. He's a retired U.S. Navy SEAL and former U.S. Air Force Tactical Air Control Party member who served in the Iraq War. He's the former world record holder for the most pull-ups done in 24 hours. A while back, David was trying to raise money for a charity that supports the families of fallen soldiers. As a form of fundraising, David wanted to join a race known as the Badwater 135 in order to raise money. He was told by organizers that he would need to do an ultra marathon first because the Badwater 135 is an invitation-only event. So David signed up for an ultra marathon without much preparation. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these events, but they are 4 times the length of a regular marathon. As David was embarking in the event, he expectedly began to feel fatigued. David was pretty mentally tough and managed to make it 70 miles before his body began to shut down. David collapsed. He had blood in his urine. He had diarrhea that was going down his leg. He wanted to give up, and who could blame him? Then David began to think about his past accomplishments as an athlete and in the military. Suddenly, he felt his energy level pick up. He realized that just thinking about that feeling of accomplishment was changing his mental state. He wanted to feel that sense of accomplishment again. David regained the strength and energy he needed to finish the final 30 miles of the race. He went on to christen this method of overcoming difficult times as the cookie jar method. You see, the cookie jar is just a symbol for all your past success and the feelings you felt when you accomplished a goal or a feat. Every time you accomplish something, store that moment in your cookie jar. Then, when you hit those moments where times are hard and you just want to give up, reach back into that cookie jar in your brain and remember those feelings. This practice can change your mindset and provide a much-needed boost. So go ahead and take some time after finishing this episode and develop your cookie jar. Make mental note of all of your most prized accomplishments. Reflect on those feelings you had during those moments. Then, down the road, whether it's one day or 1 year from now, when you get to an obstacle or tough time in your life and you want to throw in the towel, utilize the cookie jar. I hope today's episode helps. I know hearing this story has certainly changed my perception on this subject. That's all the time I have for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. Share some of your thoughts on this episode by reaching out to the show on social media. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow on another episode of the Lessons for Success podcast. Well, folks, that's it for another edition of the Lessons for Success podcast. Thank you for listening. Remember that you can keep up with the show wherever podcasts are found, as well as the newly updated Lessons for Success YouTube channel. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok to keep up with more content from the show. If you haven't already done so, give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. That's all the time I have for today. Be sure to tune in for the next episode of the Lessons for Success show.